I think Tennessee got the short end of the stick in the college football playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday night. Tennessee beats Mississippi State. So in and of itself, I don't think that you automatically move up. But with the Georgia loss and the Miami loss, I thought Tennessee would move up to number 5. That didn't happen. Caleb, the college football playoff committee chairman, had some reasoning behind that. What did he say? Because whatever he says, I'm just going to go ahead and say,
like, that is total bullshit.
All right, but what did he say?
So this is Warde Manuel who said this. By the way, he is the athletic director at Michigan, which you brought up earlier. So you can talk about maybe the conflict of interest there. But he is...
I'll say more than this conflict of interest. I think this is a total setup so that the SEC just gets 4 teams in, despite what they may deserve, because the Big Ten is only going to get 4 teams at best in. I think that's exactly what this is. I think this is a setup to screw over either Tennessee or whoever should be that 5th team and make it, period.
That's very true. By the way, before we go any further, I have to address 2 questions. Travis and Steve asked about Arkansas, how they would have finished number 1 that year and undefeated in 98. No, because Tennessee would have beaten them in the SEC title game in a rematch. That's my point. Okay, so back to the point we're talking about here. Warde Manuel says that we thought the drop was actually about Nico Iamaleava's injury. And I would look, they have to take that into account. So Dave, I would have been fair on that, right? And you probably would have been too, right? If they were just honest and said, yeah, it's about the injury and we need to know if he's healthy. I think I can give him a pass on that because they do have to take that into account.
No, I'm not okay with that. Now, if he would have snapped his leg in half and you knew that he wasn't going to play the rest of the season, then yes, I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with the guy going into the week questionable. No, I'm not. I wouldn't be okay with that either. Now, I understand what happened with Hendon Hooker because Tennessee also got hammered against South Carolina. I understand that, but no, I wouldn't go with that line of thinking. So we may differ on that.
Well, it doesn't matter anyway, because here's what he said. He said in an interview with Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel, who covers Tennessee, Adam Sparks asked him about this. He said, quote, "It really came down to the play last week of both Indiana and BYU, both winning big games on their schedule. So when looking at it, as we assessed all the teams, we just felt like Indiana and BYU earned the 5 and 6 slot and Tennessee stayed where they are." All right, guys, let me just point this out. Indiana beat Michigan by 5. Michigan's 5 and 5 right now. So that's a big win on their schedule. BYU beat, and by the way, Warde Manuel, again, athletic director at Michigan. BYU beat Utah by 1 and needed very poor officiating to do it. Utah was 4 and 5 and on their 3rd string quarterback. How can you say you vaulted BYU based on a big win? Oh, because what? It's an in-state game, BYU, Utah, the Mormon rivalry out there. Like, what? How can you say it's based on that when Utah is a losing record? They're down to their 3rd string quarterback and BYU needed officiating to win. They call me crazy. Aren't you supposed to watch the games and not just go based on resume? Aren't you supposed to actually look at how they play in the games? Isn't this part of this process?
I don't think they are at this point.
He's lying.
I don't think they watch all the games. I mean, let's remember, all these guys still have full-time jobs. Okay? So how many games do you need to watch each and every week to be best informed? 20? Probably 20?
Probably.
15, 20 games?
Yeah.
Now, I know that my television service has the cut-ups, which are really cool, which you can watch a whole game in 30 minutes. But that's still 10 hours, bare minimum, right?
Yep.
So are they adding 10 hours to their schedule? Are they watching all these games? Absolutely not. Will they do so before the final playoff projection? I don't think so either. Guys, I think this is a TV show. Each and every week this has come out. And Caleb, you're the history guy. You could probably go back and look this up. There's been some change that nobody expected, like when Alabama passed Tennessee, or there's been like this past week. And it's not just Tennessee. They want a TV show. They don't want to come up and just throw chalk out there. Can you imagine, for instance, if the basketball tournament committee, the NCAA basketball tournament committee did a prelim before the conference tournaments, and like on a Sunday, they said, this is what it's going to look like. And then the conference tournaments played chalk, and they come out on Sunday, and it's basically the same thing. You don't want this to be the same show every week. You don't want it to be predictable. Guys, this is a television show. And we talked about this with Jimmy Himes yesterday. They want this to be compelling. And there's nothing compelling about just moving people up, as the AP did to a fault for a number of years. There's nothing compelling about that, Caleb. They want this to be Friends or Seinfeld. They want it to be something you've got to tune into every week. And it's not if they just do the logical stuff from week to week.
I think you're right. But it's laughably stupid how they do it. And they're just, I mean, how does anybody, they're going to kill the credibility of, here's the sacrifice you make with sports, Dave. You sometimes have to risk the fact that a dull TV show will happen to maintain your credibility. Otherwise, you will lose viewers, period. Isn't that the nature of sports more than anything else?
Yes.
You have to accept that things will be dull sometimes. And the NFL,
I've covered more bad games than I have great games. Okay,
exactly.
Like the Texas El Pasos of the world, it's 45-3. Do you think I really wanted to be covering that game instead of watching maybe Georgia, Alabama on another television?
No, not at all. Not at all. And you cover those games, but you accept it because it's worth it, because at some point you're going to get a Tennessee-Florida game that goes into overtime and in a top 5 matchup and Tennessee wins. You're right. This is the issue with television, the internet, everything now. Everything has to be more dramatic than it previously was. They do this. I mean, I'll just say it. They do it with politics. We just had an election. Dave, how many times have you heard over the last 5 election cycles, this is the most important election of your life?
Yes,
like,
a lot.
Every single election now is an existential threat because, and by the way, spoiler alert, they never are. They're not existential threats. You have an election every 2 years and 4 years, and you can change things very quickly in this country if you don't like it. Okay. But they have to do that because they need the ratings and they need the views, and both sides do. And you're seeing the same with sports now. You need more and more chaos to outdo the chaos you saw the week before, just to keep the viewers interested. I mean, this is so crazy, Dave, because I think back to how the Super Bowl was branded. I don't understand why this is the business model, because let's just take the Super Bowl, for instance. The Super Bowl got branded as the biggest event in sports. And most of the games before 2000 were just terrible dud blowouts that put you
terrible. Yeah, throughout my lifetime, when I was growing up watching football, I remember, yes, absolutely horrible.
Yeah, and it still got branded that, because you know what? When it was exciting like that, then when you get the Titans-Rams Super Bowl that I'm still sick over, where the Titans came up 1 yard short, it was just a huge storyline. And so I think I think you're right. I think the playoff committee is purposely creating chaos, so we're all going to keep watching. I don't believe them for 1 second that they're going to keep them here. And the thing that upsets me is that Warde Manuel says that the injury to Nico Iamaleava was not a factor. Now, again, you think that it should be, and I understand that, but I think
No. I don't think it should be mid-season.
Okay, but you don't think the nature of this injury, the timing of this injury you don't think it should be a factor because of those two things, basically. And I actually am fine with that. I think I probably agree with you. What I'm trying to say is that I think Warde Manuel is lying. I think they did factor in the injury to Nico Iamaleava. I think they threw that in to say either they are purposely doing what you're saying, which is trying to create chaos just for the heck of it, or they took the Nico Iamaleava injury into account and they're lying to us. I don't know. Which one do you think it is, Dave? Or do you think it's both?
I'll address that. It's open enrollment time when it comes to Medicare. Medicare Misty takes care of you. No cost from Medicare Misty. And she's registered, licensed in over 40 states, so she can take care of you. I'll answer that very question in 30 seconds.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her
I'll answer it with this. A 10-2 team, Tennessee team, that doesn't make the SEC championship game and doesn't play for a championship and get an automatic bid, a 10-2 team without Nika, let's say something were to happen in this final month of the regular season, would be the team left out of the college football playoff if there are 5 10-2 teams. Period. End of discussion. I have no doubt. Do you?
No, unless another quarterback somewhere else gets hurt. Like if Jackson Dart gets hurt, they're leaving Ole Miss out at that point.
Right. But if everything else is,
yeah, if everything, yes, they're going to do that. But they haven't denied that they would do that. I'm saying this week. I think this week they're factoring it into account. I don't know what you think, Dave, but I think
that to me is absurd.
But he says they're not. I'm saying, do you think he's lying when he says?
I think he's lying, and I hate using the word lying. I think he's lying. I think he's flat out lying.
I'm mostly with you. I think he's totally lying on that. There's no way you could say BYU.
Well, also, let me take that back. I think he's lying as a whole. I think it's the television show thing, and that maybe gives them an excuse not to move Tennessee up and to have BYU and Indiana move past them. I think it gives him an excuse. I think to come out there and say anything other than, hey, guys, it's a television show. Check out the ratings. I think anything other than that's a lie.
Well, and by the way, we're talking about Tennessee, and his excuse was terrible because, again, let's be clear. Okay, can we be fair on this with Indiana versus BYU? Can we at least say, even though Michigan's 5-5, beating Michigan at Michigan, that gives Indiana a little more credibility than beating Utah when they're 4-5 and have a third-string quarterback gives BYU credibility. Is that fair to say?
Can we say, yeah, comparable.
Yeah, Indiana. Yeah, you can maybe make a case with Indiana. BYU's is just ridiculous. They beat Utah. Utah's terrible and on their third-string quarterback, and they won off a terrible call. It makes no sense. But I'll be honest. I'm going to go further, Dave. If you're Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, you should be upset too. Because actually, and I'll even say SMU. I'll throw SMU in there. You know why? What is Miami doing ahead of you? And let's just take Miami and SMU, 2 ACC teams. Both have 1 loss. Miami just lost to Georgia Tech. Why is Miami ahead of you if you're SMU? And I mean, outside of brand name and outside of we got to keep them in the playoff ranking because we want them to be intrigued. Their resumes are pretty comparable, honestly. And I think it's again, you're right. It's the TV show of all of this. And look, I've been very critical of the whole college football playoff format. I'm more critical of it now. They're getting what they wanted going into the last 3 weeks of the season because there is a lot of chaos because there's such a cluster of teams. They're getting exactly what they wanted.
Hey, this goes back before your time. There's always been these arguments who should play for a championship, who the number 1 team is. Sometimes it was the AP. Sometimes it was a coach's poll, who gets recognized, blah, blah, blah. There's been split national championships. More than any other sport, that's what college football is built on. The discussion around the game more so than what happens on the field.